if you're like me, this has been a very unsettling year for you. We wake up to news nearly every day that points to the unfurling of America, to the undoing of the America we've always known. Every day there seems to be a new story of a presidential order or a presidential decree that has the net effect of turning America into the exact kind of country that we've always fought against. It's I don't know. I know there are a lot of people who feel the same way, but it's weird. You go outside and everything seems normal. People coming and going, doing what they always have done, but deep down inside that something's going to break. Well, if you're like me, you've gone a lot of this year saying, well, if this happens, then we'll be on the road to authoritarianism. If this happens, we'll be much closer to a dictatorship. And it has finally happened. The thing we've all been waiting for happened this week. And it's interesting to me that when democracy ends, there's no announcement. There's no signing of a new bill that caused it to happen. There's no amendment to the Constitution that caused it to happen. It's just like death by 1,000 cuts. And you have to have a little discernment to know when you've gotten to that final cut. And we've done that this week. The president signed a national security presidential memorandum. And I just wanted to read something from Rachel Hurley, who gave a nice introduction to this when she said, while everyone was distracted by the Jim Comey indictment theater this past week, Trump signed something far more dangerous. National Security Presidential Memorandum number 7, NSPM 7 for short, and it labels common political beliefs as indicators of terrorism. If you were anti-Christian or anti-American or anti-capitalist or whatever you don't even have to be against those things for them to be able to accuse you of being against those things. Ask Jimmy Kimmel. He didn't do what they said he did, yet they tried to get him fired. That's going to start happening all over the country, except instead of getting you fired, they have now, based on this order from the president, will now be able to legally investigate you, arrest you, put you on trial, convict you, and send you to jail, based on what I'm going to share with you. If you hold any of the views that this memorandum mentions, you're now on a list of potential domestic terrorists. And most of the media missed it entirely or got it wrong, calling it an executive order when it's not. It's actually something much more powerful than an executive order. Executive orders direct how the federal government operates day to day. A national security memorandum, though, is a sweeping policy decree for defense, intelligence, and law enforcement. Okay? Now, let's take a look at this. And one thing I just want to say, you thought they would come only for the undocumented immigrants who had committed crimes. And they did that for maybe a few hours when this all started. And then they came for undocumented immigrants who had committed no crime. And we kind of winced and thought, wait, that doesn't sound right. This can't be good. And we were right. It's not good. Then they came for documented immigrants who were here completely legally and who have committed no crime. You see where this is going? I said in the beginning, and it sounded a little crazy at the time, but when Trump started doing these deportations and it became clear how they were treating people, I said very early on, several months ago, and I said this to MAGA supporters. I said, seriously, you think this is going to stop here? No, this is going to keep going and getting worse and worse until it gets to all of us. Like everybody we know. You think you're an American citizen, you're safe. No, you're not. Because now this order that the president signed this week gives our government full authority to come after American citizens, people who were born and raised here, people who had American citizen parents and were born and raised here. People who've never been out of the country and whose parents and grandparents have never been out of this country. They can now come after you based on this order simply for having spoken words that they don't like. Okay? Let me read this. Let me read some excerpts of this order to you and see if you come away with the same conclusion. All right, so here it is from the White House, countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. All right, sounds okay. I mean, seriously, everything that this says is written in a way that it sounds okay. And if they did it the way you would think they would based on what it says, you know, it wouldn't be so bad. But like a lot of false religious teachers, a lot of preachers in Christianity and so-called Christian churches, the same way they will take words that we all use, like faith or forgiveness and grace and mercy and things like that, and assign a slightly different meaning to them that totally twist the meaning. And then what they're teaching you from the Bible is completely off base from what the Bible says. And a lot of these people who go to churches like that are the biggest MAGA supporters, and they're doing it now in politics. They're using words that we all normally understand to mean a certain thing, but they're going to twist the meaning or assign different meanings to these words so that they can use these laws for their own purposes. All right? So National Security Presidential Memorandum number 7 for the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of Homeland Security. Subject, countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. Great, no one's against that, right? Well, wait till you hear the rest of this. Section 1, domestic terrorism and organized political violence. Heinous assassinations and other acts of political violence in the United States have dramatically increased in recent years. Even in the aftermath of the horrifying assassination of Charlie Kirk, some individuals who adhered to the alleged shooter's ideology embraced and cheered this evil murder while actively encouraging more political violence. Okay? Now here's what I want to say about them assigning different meanings to words. They say some terrible individuals embraced and cheered this evil murder, and then who did they immediately try to get fired? Jimmy Kimmel, right? So you would think Jimmy Kimmel said something like, I'm glad Charlie Kirk got killed. But he didn't say that. And I don't know anyone who would say that. I would never say that. I disagree with Charlie Kirk on a lot of things. And I thought he was pushing some seriously bad ideas, although they were clothed in the types of ideas and things that in the past I would have followed and I would have agreed with. So they tried to get Jimmy Kimmel fired, suggesting that he had embraced and cheered the evil murder of Charlie Kirk, which it was. It was evil, and political violence has no place in our country or in our political system at all. So here's the thing. If they're saying we are going to go after people who embrace and cheer things like that, violence, political violence, we're going to go after them. And then we look at who they've gone after so far. They went after Jimmy Kimmel, who basically said MAGA is, trying to do everything in their power to make sure people don't think that the assassin of Charlie Kirk looks anything like them. Because in certain ways, he did look a little bit like MAGA people. Okay? I'm not saying MAGA people did this. I don't say the right or the left is responsible for this. This was done by one individual as far as we know up till now. I don't know anybody on the right or the left who supports this kind of violence. Even MAGA people, MAGA friends I have, I don't know any of them who support this. And friends on the left that I have, none of them support this either. Okay? So look, a crazed individual comes out and does something evil. Let's stop blaming the whole half the country for it. That's one problem. And that's one problem, that they are doing this and it's coming out now in official acts and changes in rules and laws, as you will see. Then it says this was preceded by the 2024 assassination of a senior healthcare executive. Okay, what does that have to do with Charlie Kirk? And what does that have to do with political violence? That wasn't a political thing. That was a healthcare thing. Somebody didn't like the way United Healthcare was, being so stingy in giving out the benefits that people had paid for with their health insurance. So they tied Charlie Kirk together with the guy who was the CEO of United Healthcare. And now they're going to tie that together with the 2022 assassination attempt against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. That guy was just sentenced, by the way, this week to many years in jail for, I think, 8 years in jail, I think it was. Okay, 2 separate assassination attempts against my own life, the president, in less than 3 months took place in 2024 election cycle. Riots in Los Angeles and Portland reflect more than a 1,000% increase in attacks on U.S. immigrations and customs enforcement. So he's just tying together all kinds of things that are totally unrelated. Charlie Kirk, the guy that, the president, the Brett Kavanaugh, and the guy who was the chairman of United Healthcare. And they mention nothing about Democrats who have had violence perpetrated against them. The 2 people in Minnesota, I believe it was, a few months ago, who were attacked. One was murdered, assassinated, and I think the other one, their spouse was killed. Anyway, that was a terrible attack, and they haven't said anything about that, and this makes no mention of that at all. Makes no mention of anyone on the left who's ever been the victim of political violence, which makes you wonder about the honesty behind this. Is this a true, honest document? Do they really mean this, or is it a way? Just ask yourself, is this a way to clamp down and silence political enemies? That's what you got to ask. If you're with MAGA, look, if you're not MAGA, I know you already know the answer to that. So I'm kind of talking to MAGA people right now. If you are MAGA and you're honest, be honest with yourself. And I can't hear you. So, you don't have to, pretend to me that you're putting up a big front. I can't hear you. So just listen and ask yourself, is this a way to silence political opposition, or is it really a way to clamp down on political violence? Okay? Next paragraph. This political violence is not a series of isolated incidents and does not emerge organically. Instead, it is a culmination of sophisticated, organized campaigns of targeted intimidation, radicalization, threats, and violence designed to silence opposing speech, limit political activity, change or direct policy outcomes, and prevent the functioning of a democratic society. A new law enforcement strategy that investigates all participants in these criminal and terroristic conspiracies, including the organized structures, networks, entities, organizations, funding sources, and predicate actions behind them is required. This is seriously dangerous. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where this paragraph right here, we can just do it. We can call an end to American democracy. This is so clear. I mean, it's almost coming out and saying it. It's so clearly a way to silence political opposition. They're saying all these political attacks were a culmination of sophisticated, organized campaigns of targeted intimidation, and there's no evidence of that at all. All of these attacks were done, from what we can tell, by a single lone individual. How is that a sophisticated, organized campaign of targeted intimidation? There was no organization there. And if there was, then Kash Patel should be fired because he has only captured one man for the killing of Charlie Kirk. What's wrong with Kash Patel? What's wrong with today's FBI? Why didn't they catch this whole organization that was behind this killing and this targeted campaign of intimidation? Why haven't they found them? Because they're not there. If they were there, they would have found them, and they would be telling us about it. All this is made up. This is made up. This is what dictators always do. This is how dictators take over free societies and turn what were once, healthy democracies into an authoritarian country. It goes on to say these campaigns often begin by isolating and dehumanizing specific targets to justify murder or other violent actions against them. They do so through a variety of fora, or forums. That's Latin. That's plural for forum. And watch what they do later on in the sentence. Later on in the next phrase, they do so through a variety of fora, plural for forums, including anonymous chat forums. Why don't they say including anonymous chat fora? Okay, why do you use the Latin word here and the English word here? That's crazy. I mean, the English plural and the Latin plural. Literally, just like 5 words apart. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, about 5 words apart. Okay. Anyway, so sorry I got off on that. But this is another thing, actually. This is not totally silly. I see so many grammar mistakes or just poor writing in so many of these things that are put out by this administration. In the past, these things would have been written beautifully and perfectly and no mistakes. They had real experts like writers, professional writers, and lawyers, actual lawyers, who weren't AI lawyers, but real lawyers, who would write these things, and they were perfect, grammar perfect. Nothing weird like, oh, let's use the Latin plural for forum here, and then 5 words later, let's use the English plural. Anyway, anonymous chat forums, that's online discussions, in-person meetings, social media, and even educational institutions. This will give them the justification they need to go after all these things. They'll go after all the social media companies. I don't know what this in-person meetings, that just gives them carte blanche to pretty much go after anything. Social media, again, and educational institutions, another justification to attack the schools and colleges and universities. Oh man, seriously, this is serious stuff. If you guys don't realize it, then stop voting, please. These campaigns then escalate to organized doxing, where the private or identifying information of their targets, such as home addresses, phone numbers, or other personal information, is exposed to the public with explicit intent of encouraging others to harass, intimidate, or violently assault them. Now, I lost this article. I just read it. Let me put you on pause and go find this real quick. It's very interesting, actually. Okay, I got it. Here we go. This is a story about the governor's race in New Jersey. Very heated race right now, and it's getting pretty close, dangerously close. You know, New Jersey is normally a very democratic state, but this guy, Jack Ciattarelli, is making a pretty strong showing against Mikey Sherrill, or Cheryl, I guess Cheryl. Mikey, her name's actually pronounced Mikey, not Mickey. It's a woman. Mikey Sherrill, okay? Look what happened. She was swift-boated. In other words, they doxed her. Here, look at this. They have gotten information from her military record. She was in the military. And who's in charge of military records today? The National Archives. And who's in charge of the National Archives? Who's the head guy, the big kahuna at the National Archives? It's Marco Rubio, okay? So check this out. I don't know, they found some information that smeared her, I guess. So it says, the smear now appears to include something illegal. The release of Cheryl's, get this, unredacted military records, which would be a potential violation of the Privacy Act, and multiple federal protections designed to safeguard the personal information of veterans and civilians. Releasing the records, listen to this, which include Cheryl's social security number, home address, and other personally identifiable information is dangerous, putting Cheryl, and by extension, all veterans at risk. The National Archives have been run by Secretary of State Marco Rubio since February. Trump and the GOP's strategy is clear. Whether it's gerrymandering in Texas or blocking duly elected Democratic members of Congress from taking their seats. If they can't win, they use underhanded tactics to get the outcomes they want. In doing so, they not only erode the foundations of the democratic process, but also dishonor the service and sacrifice of those who risk their lives to defend it. So over here, we have an order from the president that specifically mentions doxing. Okay, where is it? Let me see. Here we go. These campaigns then escalate to organized doxing. The administration just doxed a candidate for governor in New Jersey because she's a Democrat, and they want their MAGA guy to win. And they are going to pull out all stops, even breaking the law, and even doing what the president now says is tantamount to terrorism. He's going to go after people who do these things, and he's doing it. His administration is doing it. Unbelievable. Guys, seriously, if you're on MAGA side, wake up. Don't be afraid of being woke. It won't make you woke. Just wake up, okay? I was a conservative all my life. I woke up to Trump and what's going on here, and I'm still conservative, basically. I just don't know how much I want this government enacting any conservative policies, because what I see them doing is turning everything into a dictatorship. And they do things in the harshest and most horrible ways. I mean, the way they're arresting these immigrants with masked gunmen jumping out of their personal vehicles and just treating them horribly. It shows, that's the fruit of this movement. And if you're a Christian supporter of this movement, you got to wake up. Don't be afraid of being woke. Yeah, you won't be woke. You'll be awake, okay? Not the same thing. But you got to wake up and look around and stop supporting this stuff that's so anti-Christian and so hostile to the gospel. All right? All right, and then he says this. There are common recurrent motivations and indicators uniting this pattern of violent and terroristic activities under the umbrella of self-described anti-fascism. I was a lifelong Republican. That's what our whole thing was. We were anti-fascist. This administration is openly going after people who are anti-fascist. Okay, I know they think they're part of some liberal socialist group, but there's no group, okay? To have the Republican Party going against people who are against fascists, that's insane. Literally, if you'd asked me 20 years ago which party would do that, I would say the Democrats, of course. I see now I was wrong about that too. But anyway, these movements portray foundational American principles such as support for law enforcement and border control. So if you don't support law enforcement or you're not for border control, you could be classified as a terrorist now. He's saying people are using all these things to justify and encourage acts of violent revolution. The only act of violent revolution was January 6th. Common threads animating, these are all the people they want to go after, okay? Common threads animating this violent conduct include anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity. Support for the overthrow of the United States government, extremism on migration, race and gender, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality. So anybody who disagrees with us on any of these things that aren't crimes to have different opinions on, they're going to be classified as terrorists, and we're going to round them up and send them down to Guantanamo. That's basically what's being said here. Look, I don't agree with people who are anti-Christian or anti-capitalist, but I don't want them put in jail. This is a pluralistic society. That's our whole strength, is we allow people to have different beliefs and they can express them publicly without fear of being put in jail. That's the strength of our country, not a weakness. Not a weakness. Look around the world. Every country that's prosperous and what you might call a first world country, do they allow free speech? Every single one of them does, yes. With the possible exception of China. It's not really a Western country, though. I mean, it's a communist country that has put some capitalistic business practices in place, and they're doing well, thanks to our help in large part over the decades. But every country that's a dictatorship, a serious dictatorship, Russia, North Korea, Iran, do they allow free speech? No, they don't. So you guys, you got to wake up. Wake up. Stop being afraid of being woke and wake up, okay? As described in the order of September 22nd, 2025, listen to this, designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, the groups and entities that perpetuate this extremism have created a movement that embraces and elevates violence to achieve policy outcomes, including justifying additional assassinations. For example, Charlie Kirk's alleged assassination engraved the bullets, Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin engraved the bullets used in the murder with so-called anti-fascist rhetoric. Okay, so that's one guy. If you want to say there's a whole country behind him, and they are saying this, they're saying everyone on the left, and what they mean by left is everyone who doesn't support Trump. So they're saying literally now more than half the country, I think his approval ratings are down to about in the low 40s now. So his disapproval is in the high 50s, means more than half the country could be on this terrorist list. And that includes a lot of former Republicans, such as myself. So you're going to put people who normally would be your natural ally on this terrorist list. Good job. Very good job. What I wanted to say here, though, this is hilarious. The order, he brags about the order of September 22nd, designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. But it's not even an organization. There's no organization called Antifa. I'm anti-fascist. I'm not a member of any organization. And I certainly don't hold the views of a lot of the people who are on that, involved in that movement. It's a movement, but you can't, how can you prosecute a movement? This stuff is just so crazy. Anyway, these presidential orders will also investigate institutional and individual funders and officers and employees of organizations that are responsible for, sponsor, or otherwise aid and abet the principal actors engaging in the criminal conduct described in these subsections. Okay, so that's the George Soros paragraph that allows them to go after people like George Soros. They're going to go after anybody, any big rich person who donates money to democratic causes. This is outrageous. We should be alarmed. This is, this literally is the biggest story of the year, in my opinion. History is full of examples of governments using national security as a pretext to crush political opposition. And that's all this is. Don't you understand? They're using national security as a pretext to crush political opposition by saying it's dangerous. If anybody says anything critical of the president or the administration, that's dangerous because that could motivate other people to want to commit violence against him or against the regime. Every authoritarian regime starts by labeling dissent as a security threat. And that's exactly what they're doing here. Absolutely exactly what they're doing. The question isn't whether this will be abused. It's already being abused. The question is how far it will go and how far will whatever other powers that be that exist anymore in this country, how far will they let it go if they're able to stop it? I mean, I don't see the Supreme Court stopping this. They've already ruled the president can do anything as long as it's part of his official duties. He made it part of his official duties by signing this order. But, when the president can designate political beliefs as indicators of terrorism, when law enforcement can investigate people for pre-crime based on their speech, when the entire intelligence and law enforcement apparatus is directed to monitor and disrupt political organizing, You don't live in a democracy anymore. You don't. It's over. It's dead. It's done. There's no more. Look, there's no more. Oh, if this happens, then we'll go down the dictatorship road. No, it already happened now. It's done. Okay. We now live in a country where criticizing the president can literally make you a terrorist. They can now categorize you as a terrorist if you hold any views they don't like. And they say anti-Christian, anti-American, anti-capitalist, but you know what that means. You could literally say anything, and if they don't agree with it, they're going to say, well, you're anti-Christian. I, as a Christian, there's a lot of things I know I could say that would make them say I was anti-Christian. Like, how about this? Love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. Oh, and if you think that's just kind of optional or it's meant for good neighbors or people who are like pretty decent, Jesus also said, love your enemies. So he covered all the bases. It means we got to love everybody, okay? That, in their view, would make me a subversive, for sure, you know? Anyway, this order on its own makes the United States officially and literally an authoritarian state. And that's where we are, and I feel like signing off like Walter Cronkite, and that's the way it is, Saturday, October 4th, 2025. Because that's the way it is. And we're going to have to start to learn to deal with this new reality. And we still got to fight it. And, fight, no, I don't mean violence. I never mean violence. I don't mean anything violent, ever, okay? So put that on the record. But yeah, we got to fight it in the political realm by speaking out, by trying to convince people, by persuading people. We're in a very dangerous place right now in the United States. And we all need to pull together, first realize where we are and what a critical situation this is. And then we really got to talk our hearts out online, everywhere you go. That's how they got to where they are now. Do you realize that? By just talking and blasting people online for disagreeing. Well, now we have the facts, and they now have the track record that we can blast. So let's get on there and start blasting, all right? Hey, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.